yes. The originals were the Don't Be That Guy campaign, which characterized all men as potential rapists. And those are offensive. So what we did to indicate the offensive nature of the original campaign was reverse them, and with a target with women as the Don't Be That Girl. Well, yeah, actually, I'm actually really glad that they've said that these new posters are offensive, because they're essentially admitting that the originals are offensive as well. And to be honest, we're a bunch of grassroots activists. The originals were paid for by the government. Well, once again, yes, the original campaign was about the Don't Be That Girl campaign, Don't Be That Guy campaign, which originally referenced sexual assault. Now, there were those particular posters that got into the media were the ones that the media selected as the most, interesting or whatever. There were other Don't Be That Girl posters that went out that explicitly referenced women sexually assaulting men. It wasn't just false rape accusations, but once again, the point of the Don't Be That Girl campaign poster, it's not an awareness campaign, it's simply to point out the offensiveness of the original Don't Be That Guy poster by taking something that generally women do more of, for example, putting babies in dumpsters, and implying that all women will do it. Just like the original Don't Be That Guy campaign implied all men did it. Or potential rapists.
Sorry, I'm just catching up in my notes here.
So essentially this is just, it's essentially of the same form. Don't Be That Guy was, all men do this bad thing. Don't Be That Girl is, all women do this bad thing. Or sorry, okay. All women are potentially, can potentially do this bad thing. All men potentially do this bad thing, all women potentially do this bad thing. That was the point of the Don't Be That Girl campaign.
Okay. So with the baby dumpster campaign, you say it's not exactly an awareness campaign, but there is some information about the infanticide laws. So is that incidental, or is there actually some sort of an effort to change some of those laws?
Well, the reality is that the laws themselves are somewhat offensive, but having said that, the emphasis on the law is the indication of the double standard that's existing in this situation, where women can get a lesser degree, are charged with a lesser offense for killing infants. There may be an element of awareness to bring attention to the law, or also it may be because the reality is I'm not the one who created that particular poster, but it may also be trying to emphasize the fact that there's this double standard in treatment in society to justify why we are singling out women in this particular poster in order to make this as a parallel to the Don't Be That Guy campaign, right? So we're saying that women get this particular latitude, and the original Don't Be That Guy campaign said that men engage in rape culture, or present this idea that men get some particular latitude to rape. So there's the parallel. Now, we would take issue with the idea that men get any sort of latitude to rape, which was some of what was implied by the Don't Be That Guy campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Or the feminist concept of rape culture. Take your pick.
Which I assume you reject.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, actually, that depends. Now, if you're talking about men as sexual violence victims, I think the feminist concept of rape culture has some applicability. I do not think that society condones, endorses, or even is indifferent to the rape of women. I haven't seen any evidence of this. Now, condones, endorses, and indifferent to the rape of men, yes. Rape of women, no.
Okay. So maybe this is because, like you said, there's certain posters that seem to be highlighted and that seem to make it into the larger awareness. But you're describing somewhat more nuanced critiques than I think maybe the posters sometimes get across. Is this a good strategy to sort of go with a more purposely offensive campaign rather than one that maybe did seek to educate more?
Well, first of all, we are, in a way, we're not educating about these issues. Maybe to some degree we're educating about this double standard in law that favors women. But the idea of these campaigns is not to educate people on false accusations or infanticide. For example, to use the original false accusation campaign, if we were to do a legitimate awareness campaign on false accusations, we would also address the role that men play in vigilante justice against the presumptively innocent men accused of rape. So it wouldn't be just targeted at one gender, because this is a problem that faces all people, and it is perpetuated by more than just women, and, just like rape is perpetuated by more than just men. So if this was an honest awareness campaign of these issues, we would do an inclusive approach to address all facets of it. This campaign was explicitly intended to be offensive, to draw attention to the problems of the original. And the reality is it worked, because we are getting media awareness. We've had other campaigns where we've just brought awareness to issues that men face, such as lack of services for domestic violence, such as sexual abuse, such as simple lack of compassion for society, for men and boys, that society has for men and boys. And these campaigns, they don't get any attention. Have you heard of them?
About campaigns such as male rape and other inequalities, as you perceive them?
Well, first of all, I would take issue with the term male rape, because it anomalizes male victims of rape. But yes.
Well, I mean, you do see them, but I would agree with you that it is not as prominent as it should be.
And also, the reality is that the media chooses what they choose to pay attention to, and they just don't pay attention to those other campaigns that we've done.
Is there not an issue of scale, though? Because, as many people point out, especially with the false accusations of rape, there seems to be a disparity between the number of accounts of sexual assault and the number of false accusations. So perhaps the emphasis seems to rub people the wrong way.
Well, the reality is that we don't really know how many false accusations happen. Now, people focus on the ones who are the ones that go through the court, but we're also talking about false accusations that are purely social. They don't ever even see the inside of a court. They're never told to police. Some of these false accusations have led to men being beaten and dying. And the reality is that the scope of the problem is irrelevant to the victims who are affected by it. And so that's what I would say, is that, I mean, trans people are uniquely singled out for violence against them, but compared to the rest of society, the amount of violence that they suffer is minimal. The size of the population of victims doesn't matter.
So the size of the population doesn't matter? Then what does? Is it the frequency?
What matters is the severity. And furthermore, like I said, you can't know the size of the population because you're comparing, even with the studies that have been done, you are comparing the scope of something that's going through the legal system, when in fact there are false accusations that never go through the legal system. So you would need a study explicitly looking at false accusations across the board to understand how many have occurred. Now, Stop Abusive and Violent Environments in the U.S. did do a study, and they found that I believe 10% of people either had a false accusation against them or knew of someone who had a false accusation against them. So it's not a small situation. It's not a minor problem.
Okay. There seems to be an opposition set up here between men's rights activists and feminists. Is that just unavoidable, or is there any room for some of these issues to be embraced by all sides of the debate? Is that, people who care about rape and all the surrounding issues could be natural allies? I guess I don't understand the very strong anti-feminist current.
Well, I would say that feminist has a very strong anti-men's rights current. And if you want to have some examples of that, and specifically when it comes to male victims of rape, I can send you information about a feminist, in fact, the feminist who is the originator of the 1 in 4 statistic on female sexual assault in colleges, Mary Koss. She was a government consultant for the CDC, the Center of Disease Control in the United States. And essentially, she appears to have gotten male victims of female rapists scrubbed from the statistics. Instead of being, so for example, they would ask men and women, in the last 12 months, were you forced to have sex, physically forced to have sex? And essentially in the last 12 months, equal numbers of men and women said yes, except they classified the men as under the category not as rape, but made to penetrate, which is really interesting because the CDC actually has a report from other advisors that indicate that that should have been classified as rape. But for that particular set of government statistics, they decided to classify it as made to penetrate. And then they promote the statistics that 1 in 72 men are raped. Well, if you're going to classify the majority of male rape victims as not having been raped, of course you're going to find something like that. If you're going to classify the majority of men who say yes to, were you physically forced to have sex in the last 12 months as something other than rape, of course you're going to find that male rape victims are a minority.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're defining them out of existence. And this is the kind of stuff that we see in our research. For example, I've recently gotten into a discussion with a feminist professor of philosophy at Queen's University regarding the rape of, she doesn't refer to it as rape, but we're talking about juvenile underage boys, although a percentage of them are of age, in detention facilities female staff preying on underage boys in detention facilities. And this feminist professor, Adele Mercier, said, or indicated in her writing, and I can send you the exact quote, that this was unproblematic, even if it didn't involve force. That an adult having sex with a minor in a juvenile detention facility is essentially sex, not rape. And these are the kinds of attitudes we see, not necessarily with the feminists on the street who say, hey, I'm for equality, I'm feminist, but the feminists who are influencing policy in government. And here's another example. In Israel and in India, feminist groups have lobbied to either remove or prevent laws protecting men against sexual predators, female sexual predators. So it's like, yeah, at some point, at what point do you say, hey, if we were doing that, at what point would you say, hey, we got to oppose these people? I mean, if men's rights activists were saying, well, let's redefine rape to exclude the majority of female victims, or let's change the laws so that, raping women is not illegal, or let's pretend that girls can give legitimate consent to adult men who are their captors. What point would you say, hey, I got to oppose these people?
I feel like that rests on the assumption that people would not oppose it.
So far, who is opposing it?
But you presented a hypothetical scenario there.
Well, okay, who is opposing the reverse scenario? Okay, sorry, who's opposing the non-hypothetical scenario that I've put forth?
I wouldn't know right off the bat, but I don't mean to argue with you. I'm simply asking about your position today.
Yeah, and I'm describing it, so let's continue then.
So has this latest campaign, if we can just get back to the dumpster one, would this be deemed a success because it is running in several cities? I've seen lots of people talking about it online. Is more awareness the ultimate goal of this?
What we want to do is bring awareness to the reaction. Okay, this is essentially a campaign that is a gender reversed, don't be that guy campaign. And people are reacting to it the way they should react to it. Why aren't they reacting to the don't be that guy campaign the way they should react to it, with offense?
I think some people might make the argument that the difference is a certain societal imbalance in power, given that men typically and historically have had.
Okay, but let's just use this one example. If men had more power, why would a campaign indicating that they are criminal, that they are all potentially criminal, why wouldn't there be more pushback against that than a campaign indicating women are more potentially criminal? I mean, the idea, the unilateral idea that power is solely something that people, with titles have. There's also a social power, the power of compassion, the power of a compassionate response to your vulnerabilities. And here we're seeing exactly that. You put forward an issue that paints women as criminal, and there's social pushback against that. You put forward an issue that paints men as criminal, there's no social pushback against it, except for us. And we're not exactly the popular kids.
So if I can ask, how did you become involved? Like you say, it's not a popular stance to take. So what attracted you to this movement?
What attracted me to this movement was simple justice and a sense of fairness and honor. And also the fact that this is the only place where I get an understanding as myself as a woman of my responsibilities to society and to men and to other people and to kids, to children. And for me, I want to know how I can be a responsible person as a woman, not just, and I don't see that dialogue anywhere else. And that's one of the reasons why I'm attracted to it. It's a very personal reason. I feel that it empowers me by giving me a sense of responsibility, a sense that I, as a woman, can affect society and have the ability to make society more positive. So instead of the sort of feminist version of femininity, which is cry or beg or if you're feeling feisty, just get really bitchy about problems so that men can solve them for you, which is essentially all the feminist campaigns seem to end up with that. Or alternatively, you are empowered simply by having a vagina. This particular movement has laid out for me the ways in which I can take responsibility and use my agency as a person to help the situation for men and boys. And I much prefer the role of taking responsibility, of being an active agent and helping somebody else who needs my help than the role of being the one who is helped. And when I say that, I still do respect the ability of men and boys to, in situations where I might be less advantaged, like, if somebody is bullying me or something, that they would in turn step in. So it's more about a mutual support for me. And I've been involved in this particular movement for about 10 years now. So 10, 12 years.
Okay, for about 10, 12 years. Do you have a sense of if men's rights are getting more momentum over those 10 years?
Oh yeah. When I started, one of the biggest games in town was a single forum with about 500 people in it. Now there's the men's rights Reddit with pushing 80 and 90,000. And there's this activism popping up, and now this activism across Canada popping up. And it is definitely gaining momentum. I think it's gaining momentum in the last 2 years at an unprecedented rate. I think people are just sick of the abuse the acid bath of abuse that men and boys are raised in. I know as a woman, if it was directed at me, I would be really pissed. And I'm always amazed at how calm and how nonviolent men have been in response to just the constant drumbeat of misandry, being portrayed as buffoons, being portrayed as rapists, being portrayed as violent, and frankly being the opposite.
Okay. Finally, there are a lot of men who are either sympathetic to the feminist movement or identify as feminists. What is your thought about men on the other side?
Well, I have various thoughts. One, I know that men are facing a lot of very sublimated pain in this society, and I think that feminism offers them a way of avoiding facing it. Sort of like the tightrope over a chasm of pain. And and even hiding it from themselves, because instead of being in a situation of helplessness, feminist theory offers them a situation of power. It's sort of a power fantasy. Men control every aspect of society. Women essentially have to go to them to beg for anything they get, in feminist theory. And I feel that that can be very attractive as well. The idea that you're all powerful and basically omnipotent, and that you control every aspect of society. And so I think it's sort of a dual situation. It creates this fantasy of being all powerful at the same time as it allows men to avoid their vulnerabilities.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for talking to me, Alison.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay. Take care. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too. Bye.